Hey guys, Jerry here. Going to finish up this 3-part video series on how to make the sling and kind of talk about the progression of the slings as they go on. I posted some of this information over on Saddle Hunter, which is where I get a lot of my information, a lot of knowledgeable guys there. And one of the users, Navigator, correct me on a few things, so I want to make sure I put that out to you in case you're using this video or these videos to emulate any particular sling. Obviously, do your own research, look at the different slings, look at the pictures. Like I said, I've never had my hands on any of these other than the Raptor that I made earlier on. So I'm going to be wrong on some things, obviously. But, and I'm not really trying to emulate any particular sling. I'm just kind of throwing my own thing together. But what I did was, on the first 2 videos, I was referring to the 3 different styles where you have the parallel sling, what I call the parallel, with 2 individual panels. That's more the Raptor design. But he did correct me that when I talked about the series, I talked about the circle inside the circle. That's more in line with your Anderson and your Recon and your ESS. And I said that one circle is smaller than the other one, and he corrected me. They're not. They're both the same size circle. So I stand corrected on that, and be sure to take that into account whenever you are making your saddle. And Navigator, thank you for the correction, man. I appreciate it. So we're going to go into how I would put a belt and a Moly Lube on this particular sling, which is kind of almost exactly a Raptor type sling saddle. And I'll discuss that a little bit. And oh, one more correction is the sling spacing I have here is 8 inches. On the Raptor, I believe, and again, this is another Navigator correction. Let me get to it. The Anderson, Recon, and ESS routing, the outer loops are the same length. There's no smaller loop. I talked about that. But also the short pieces are spaced 6 inches apart on those other saddles. I went with 8 inches because I wanted to distribute it out a little bit, and plus I'm gonna have the panels in here, so I went with 8 inches. I did that on purpose, but 6 inches apparently is the typical spacing. I wasn't aware of that, so that's good to know. All right, so we're gonna get into the next video of how I would put Moly Lubes and a belt on this particular saddle. I'm not going to actually affix them to this saddle because I'm doing something else and I'm going to show you guys, but I did want to cover that in case this is where you guys are going to stop. All right, so getting into the next one. Okay, so with the last 2 videos, we made basically the Raptor here because it's 2 individual panels. If you were to go in series and put 2 loops together, you would have essentially the chassis for the ESS, the Recon, and the Anderson sling. What I want to talk about next is how, if I was going to leave it at this point, how I would go about putting a belt on and the Moly Loop on. And you guys can do it however you want. It's actually pretty simple process. On most saddles, you'll see, and this is on the inside of the saddle, the side that's going against you. On most saddles, you'll see they go all the way across with the webbing. I don't see any need for that on this saddle. It's just extra webbing, a little extra weight, very little, but it's a little extra weight. So what I would do is I would take a 2-inch piece of the same webbing and tack it as close to the ring as you can get it. And then I would take the piece of webbing and I would 5 inches from the edge of the outside top connector, I would go 5 inches in, and I would do 2 box stitches with X's inside. What that does is that gives you the freedom to, if you're walking, you can loop this through that loop and really cinch it tight to where the rings are in tight. Or if you're just sitting in it and you don't want it that tight, then you can take it outside, you can pull it out of that loop and it'll be attached about here, so you still have your belt on, but you have the freedom of some play in there. So that's how I would do the belt. I would do that on either side. This is a 24-inch piece of strap. I think that's plenty to cover most folks. And again, 2-inch section that's stitched just on the edges, right as close to the ring as you can get it. And then for me, it'd be 5 inches from the outside of the end connector. Box stitch, 2 box stitches inside of there. That'll put your connection about midpoint, and it gives you some flexibility in how your belt is laid up, and that would be on both sides. As far as the Moly Lube goes, again, it depends on what you like. I'm not a guy that hangs a lot of stuff off my saddle, so I typically don't use a lot of Moly Lube. I'll put 3 on the top, on the side sometimes, 2 in the middle. But a lot of guys like to run it around because we carry a bunch of bags and stuff on the saddle. So the way I do Moly Lube, and again, there's 2 different types of Moly Lube. You got the flat Moly Lube and the big loop in your Moly Lube. It just depends on what you like. If you're a carabiner clip-in guy, then you're going to want the loops. If you're just a Moly attachment type, then you're probably going to want the flat. How I typically do it is each Moly Lube is sewn a bar stitch at 1.5 inches. And what I'll do is I'll take a little piece of strap, which is 1 inch. I'll mark it with chalk every 1.5 inches, and I'll do my first stitch on my first mark, and I'll put this webbing underneath to give me a little space, and then do a bar stitch at the 1.5 inch mark, and then move it past that mark, and then do another stitch at 1.5 inches, and continue that on all the way down. If you are a little OCD like me, you're going to want one that's directly in the center. And if that's the case, then you just mark your center line and go 3/4 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch, and there's your first 1/2 inch, and then you work off to the sides from there. And you just keep doing 1.5 inches. If you're a big loop Moly guy, I use a socket. Same marks, 1.5 inches. So this edge in, and then once you get that end fixed, you put your socket underneath, you push it against that sewn end, and then you put your next mark at your 1.5 inches, you sew it, then you move your socket over, press it against it, put it down. That way you're getting consistent loops, and it looks nice. So that's how I would do Moly Loop. And again, if you're a little OCD, start in the center, 1/4, 3/4 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch, give yourself that first 1/2 inch. And it's as simple as that. What I'm going to do moving forward is I'm going to start getting into making this more of a latitude type saddle. I'm going to have 2 panels of mesh, and inside those 2 panels I'm going to have a pocket that's set up to be able to put a little piece of padding in case there's any hip pinch. You can throw that padding in there. So what I've done is I made a template based on the size of the panels. I just took the panel, put it on top of there, measured it out, and cut it out. And then I took my webbing and I cut the panels out based on the template. I cut my panels out. I cut 2 of them, one for the top, one for the bottom. Now my padding and pockets are going on the bottom panel. So what I did was I kind of got a head start here. I got my bottom panel and I cut out a little triangle that fits right over here on the side. What I'm doing is I cut it a little bit oversized, about 1/4 of an inch oversized, so that when I bind it, I'm pulling that size in and it gives it a little space for that pad. And then I started binding it. I bind the ends of these first. Just put the binding, you're wrapping it half and half, kind of splitting it, wrapping it and sewing it right down the line, and I'll show you that, guys, that here in a second. Started binding around. And you'll see the way the binding is I just come around the edge here, and then I cover that point, so there's going to be a little pocket in there. And what will happen is you have a piece of padding. This is probably going to be a little thick. That's going to slide into there, and it's going to provide a little cushion on the side. And then on the outside of the saddle, once I get it finished and this is in place, I'm going to be putting a pocket that's going to go a little deeper than this. It's going to be a fairly good sized pocket that crushes down, that you can put stuff in. And it'll probably start back here so you have room to put your hand in. So that's where I'm going with this, and I'm going to move forward and show you guys how I'm doing the binding. And now we're going to get past it being just a regular sling and try to get into kind of a latitude type saddle. All right. Alright, so getting into sewing these panels up and getting the edging on them. I'm using 1-inch gross grain. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it has kind of 4 lines built into it. And what I try to do is divide this in half through that center line over my edge, so you get a clean edge on both sides. It's a little tricky, but I'll show you how I'm putting the edging on. So I had a spot here where I had to stop because my bobbin ran out of thread. So I just did some back and forth on it to lock stitch. Now I'm overlapping that lock stitch just a little bit to make sure I'm not missing anything. Alright, now I'm going to move forward with keeping my... What I do is I tuck it too far under and then pull it up and around tight. That way I know I'm getting all the way to the edge. Here I'm going to have to stop and check my pocket size. Where did I put this? Bear with me, guys. There it is. I'm almost there. Yeah, I might as well go ahead and start including this. So I just lay this. Well, I got to do my edging on there first, so I messed up. I'm going to have to stop, do a lock stitch, cut that, come back here, edge this, and then come back to it. That's what I want to do. Gives me a chance to show you how this whole thing starts out anyways. Alright, so I overlap just a bit. Give myself about a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch on the end. Get it lined up where I want it. Pull it over. So you can see how I overlap that. Hopefully you can see that. Do your lock stitch right at the edge. Alright. Ready to move on. This is the biggest pain of the whole process. Alright, overlap a little bit. Lock stitch that in. We are back to good. Anytime I cut anything, I'm burning it. Just for, it might not do anything, but I'm doing it anyways. I'm going to trim that back a little bit more. Alright. Alright. Back to where we was. Make sure I'm on the same size. So you'll see, now I'll line that up with the bottom. And this edge. Remember to overlap your lock stitch that you did before. Lost my thread ends. Just remember to check and double check everything before you commit to sewing. Alright. Again, the lock stitch. this lined up the way you want it. Hello? All right. Alright, so I'll continue that all the way around and that panel will be ready to sew on. So one thing I wanted to show you real quick is when you end this gross grain edging, you want to fold that edge over 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch or so, just to kind of clean up that edge. I've seen guys not do it and then it comes unfrayed. So yeah, fold that over and then tuck it under before you sew it, like so. Alright, so I have my panels sewed up. And I am now trying to figure out how I want to do my belt. I think what I really like what Latitude did with their belt and the fact that it's removable and slidable. Main reason for me is I hate my belt buckle not to be center. I hate for it to be offset, so that's attractive to me. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew on my panel. I'm going to sew the edge along the edge of the webbing, and then on the other side of the on the bottom side of the top strap, I'm going to sew it. Obviously not through here, and I'll stitch it back here, and that'll give me a channel for my belt to sit into. That ought to work out pretty good. And that way my belt will come out either side. I don't wear my belt when I'm in the tree. I just don't feel it's necessary. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and sew that up, give that a shot, see how it works out, and let you guys know how it goes. Alright guys, I wanted to show you how I put that belt together. I ended up doing just what I said I was going to do. I sewed the panel in all the way around the top. I left a gap right here on either side. And I sewed the bottom of each side of webbing and terminated it at the V right here. So that gave me a channel to put the belt in. So you can see it slides back and forth and can be replaced. I like that, so I think that's going to work out good. So that's where the top panel is. Still got some cleaning up to do with my threads. Now I'm going to do the bottom panel. Alright folks, so I got the panels sewed on. I like the way it looks, I like the way it feels. It came out good. Got the two separate panels. Definitely makes all the webbing a little more manageable. I put in the pads, tried that out. That's not for me. So I'm glad I tried it. I've been wanting to try it, but now I know I don't need it. But I've already got a lot of padding. It'll fit right in there. I've already got a lot of padding, so that's not necessary for me. But some of you skinnier guys that are building one of these, try it up. You might like it. I might try to go with a little thinner padding, see if it does anything. But the saddle's actually pretty comfortable. It's actually really comfortable without those. That's kind of where it's at right now. I'm thinking I'm contemplating the outside pockets. So I was saying that I was going to put some fixed pockets right here. I'm kind of still contemplating whether I want to do that or not. For now, I'm going to skip it, just because I realize that when I'm sitting in this and I do have the panel under my rear end, it doesn't quite line up vertically. So I'm not sure. And I don't use pockets. I use my vest. I don't have anything hanging off the saddle. So it might end right here. For right now, I think that's what I'm going to do. But that's it. That's the saddle. I wanted to show you guys how I was making it. I kind of winged it as I went up. I took the Raptor design off of Saddle Hunter, like I said, and that's kind of what the base is. And then I just put the panels on it. Yeah, I think it's going to work out pretty good. So, all right, I've been tossing around what I want to do for leg loops and for Moly loops. If I want to add leg loops, if I want to add Moly loops, I've decided I am going to add leg loops. And then I tossed around different ideas on how to connect them. Do I want to connect them up to the D-rings like the ESS is, or do I want to just do something else? And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come off the center with my leg loops and then just above, or just right where my meshing matches up, I'm gonna put just some loops for them to hook into. Again, I don't use them as a load bearing piece of equipment, but I do use them to kind of manage the saddle as I'm walking in. And it might not be necessary on this one, because I've noticed that when you're walking, it actually rides up pretty high. So, but I'm gonna add them anyways. And then for the molle, I have decided that I'm just gonna go ahead and add some rings on this side and some rings on this side, and then I'm gonna have one center ring that I'm gonna do a Kydex clip, so that and I'll put a strap on the bottom so that it'll clip into that while I'm walking. That's what I ended up thinking I'm going to go with. So I'm going to go ahead and get that going, and I will get back to you guys. Alright guys, here's what we ended up with. I ended up going with the full-size molle around the back. It's just more practical. I threw around a bunch of different ideas, but this is what I came back to. I did end up adding the leg loops. Doubled it over on the inside of the 2-inch webbing. It came up just short of the rings to put my links in. Belt's still adjustable, still have the inside pockets. And there you go. As far as the bridge, like I said, I went with an Austria-Alpine buckle. You can see it's detachable, so I can split it, and I can just re-thread it into there. Well, anyways, I'll get back to it, but yeah, so you get a fully adjustable bridge, and all I did was 2 loops on either side, and did girth hitches right there on the rings. That's it.